frustration, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with anger and frustration in a constructive fashion. Anger is a healthy emotion. We all have it. We don't all know what to do with it. So we start by the basics with these 7 things that we're going to put up on the screen, I think.
Okay.
We're not,
They just had
okay.
the state the problem one.
The first is you state the problem. Now you have to be careful when you're stating the problem. You may even want to write this down with the person with whom you're having the conflict. Write the problem down. It has to be specific, not generalized, such as, I don't know, I just don't like it when you go out at night. That's so general. You have to be more specific with that. I don't like it when you go to the boat and stay 24 hours playing blackjack. Has to be very specific, so state the problem. Then you have to go to understand all points of view. That means, why do you feel that way? Why do I want to go and stay for 24 hours and play blackjack? All points of view have to be understood. And then the next thing you do is brainstorm the solutions. This doesn't mean find the solution. It means generate solutions. I go because I like it. I go because I get free Coca-Colas. I go because everybody's smiling. All points are generated. No solutions at this point, okay? Just all points are generated that you can think of. Then evaluate these, which means take them one by one between the 2 people that are in conflict. And I say, well, I want to go and stay 24 hours at a time. I don't really get into it until 12 or 14 hours has gone by, and I'm seeing whether I'm winning or losing. And the other person says, that's not a viable solution for me. You may have to X that out, but you go through all the solutions that you've generated. Then you choose the one between the 2 of you. If you minus out the ones in the step above, then you're going to come up with 1 or 2 that are viable between the 2 of you. You choose your solution, and then you have to implement it. I'll only go 2 hours 1 time a week, and I'll go with you, and we'll come away together. That might be your solution. And then you have to reevaluate it, which just means after you've gone to the boat 2 or 3 times for 2 hours with your person with whom you're in conflict, and you've come away at the end of 2 hours, after 2 or 3 weeks of this, then you assess whether it's working or not. If it doesn't work, you go back to step 1 and do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. It's going to be just a few seconds here before we'll be breaking for the middle of our program. We've been talking in the first part of the program with Dr. Mary Alice Cates about relationships and conflict resolution, and gotten some input relative to the questions on our discovery wheel. And our students, although they're a little slow to talk tonight, I think maybe we might get a few more comments out of them in the second portion of the show. And also we have had a couple of phone calls so far tonight, and we hope that that will continue. The second portion of the show, when we come back, we'll be dealing with diversity on campus. And we'll be talking with Mrs. Georgene Clark, who, along with Dr. Cates, has been a friend of mine since I came to campus 7 years ago. And so we've been working together for quite a while on several problems. And with that, I think are we ready to break? Yeah.
You are watching the course Student Success on WHCQ-TV, broadcasting in Cleveland, Mississippi. Delta State University's Division of Continuing Education and Distance Learning thanks David Ellington and WHCQ-TV for their support in bringing student success to you. Before camcorders were commonplace, people used film cameras to record family events. Here is a Bell & Howell 8mm camera. With its spring-wound motor, a person could shoot for almost 30 seconds before rewinding. 16mm film was used. One side of the film was exposed, then turned over and the other half exposed. During processing, the film was cut down the middle and the 2 parts spliced together. Perhaps you have some old films tucked away. Have them transferred to videotape so a whole new generation can enjoy them. Catch all the action of Delta State sports on the Delta State Sports Show with DSU Sports Information Director Rick Kinehart. Each week, see exciting highlights and hear the coaches' comments. Be sure to watch the Delta State Sports Show. What is a radiometer? No, it's not an old-fashioned radio. Light releases its energy in the form of heat called infrared radiation. This radiation powers the radiometer. Inside the radiometer, there is a nearly perfect vacuum. 99% of the air has been removed, leaving the remaining air particles to move around much easier. The dark veins absorb the light's heat. The air particles strike these hot veins and kick away fast, causing the veins to move.
Welcome back to the second portion of our show. In this second part of the show, we're going to be talking about diversity. We're going to be talking about diversity on campus, but we're also going to be talking about diversity of learning styles. We mentioned diversity of teaching styles in the first portion of the show. With me in the second half will be Ms. Georgene Clark, who's in our Languages and Literature Department at Delta State University, has been a friend of mine since probably just about the first day I came on campus, I think. We worked together on a lot of projects together. And she is our expert relative to cultural diversity on campus. I realize that kind of embarrasses her for me to introduce her that way, but she's been working very hard the last few years, attending workshops and going to meetings, national meetings, dealing with diversity, bringing information back and sharing it with her colleagues on campus. And so we felt that it'd be very valuable to have her with us tonight. We're going to go again to our questions on the discovery wheel, but before we get started into them, I know it'll take a little while before we can load the slides. I do want to talk just a moment about learning style diversity. For some reason, students come into college oftentimes feeling that they are supposed to learn the same way everyone else learns. And we're just not made that way. We have different attitudes about what we do and how we do it, and we need to focus on what are our greatest strengths relative to how we learn. And some people are very, very oriented towards getting their hands on something to learn about it. They need to work with it. They need to have solid objects there to work with. Others like to simply think about ideas at a very abstract level. Others like to design experiments, and others like to kind of bring ideas together and try to make them into something new. So you need to focus on which direction is your direction, which you get the most from. You need to also focus on, do you learn best by listening, by reading, by writing, and use that as your greatest strength. Some of us are very good visual learners, and we learn very well by looking at drawings or making drawings and making maps and things that we can learn from. So we'll talk about those kind of things in other shows. But let's go on to the questions now. I just wanted to have a little bit of background to this. Okay, our first question relative to diversity is, I am aware of my cultural biases and open to understanding people with different backgrounds. Again, I am aware of my cultural biases and open to understanding people with different backgrounds. Score this a 5 if you strongly agree, down to a 1 if you strongly disagree. Our second question is, I build rewarding relationships with people from other cultures and races. Again, I build rewarding relationships with people from other cultures and races. Okay. How did you all feel about especially that question relative to being aware of your cultural biases? Is it okay to have cultural biases, do you think? Is it okay to be culturally centric? You're nodding your head back there. Let's pass it. Make an end run around with the microphone. See, we'll get him to talk. Yeah, is it okay to have cultural biases?
I do think so, because that makes you. That's your personality. I think if you choose not to do, and then you try to be like someone else, then that's not truly you. Mm-hmm. You're making yourself up of other people. You feed on other people's personalities and way of life, and then you pick up on that and you say, this is the way I should be then.
What would be the advantage and the success course of knowing your own bias?
Giving you your individuality, making you, a complete person, being comfortable with yourself. Then you'll be totally, comfortable with other people. Saying,
okay.
You accept me for who I am, and I accept you for who you are. You
Okay.
don't change me and I don't change you.
Okay. We have a phone call? Okay, we do have a phone call.
Yes.
Yes, I consider myself very open-minded about people of different cultures, but I've got a good friend who is very close-minded and doesn't want to listen, and it causes a lot of problems. What do I need to do so it doesn't affect our relationship?
Okay, I think I'm going to pass this one to Miss Clark.
Oh, yeah, tough one. Question is, the caller says that they are very, very open to other cultures and having a lot of friends very diversely, but they do have a friend who's very close-minded and very, culturally centric in their own culture, very intolerant of other cultures. How might they be able to keep that friendship but still be the way they are?
Did the caller indicate whether or not the friend who's closed-minded was of the same ethnicity as the caller?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
She didn't.
Okay. That's kind of difficult, but I think the first thing that you would do in a situation like that is that closed-minded friend should be willing to learn from by example. Right. The caller should not by any means abandon her need to extend herself to knowing other people of other cultures at the risk of jeopardizing the friendship. You just don't do that. That's not a friendship. So she should continue to try to foster her relationships and set an example for the closed-minded friend. And if this is really a friend, what she'll do is try to learn from her. She will watch her. She will learn the things that she learns about people from other cultures. And by the same token, that caller will continue to celebrate her own ethnicity too. So we don't assimilate, we just embrace and appreciate, and we learn from it. So that makes us culturally diverse. It does not make us any less appreciative of our own culture, but it makes us more of a well-rounded person by having those friendships for others. And perhaps the closed-minded person will learn that if she doesn't learn it, then perhaps she doesn't need to be a friend.
That's a distinct possibility. I kind of had that suspicion, but I didn't want to verbalize it. Okay, let's go on to a couple more questions here. Okay. The third, I can point out examples of discrimination and effectively respond to them. Again, I can point out examples of discrimination and effectively respond to them. And our fourth question, this one goes beyond cultural diversity. I study in a way that draws on my preferred learning styles. Again, I study in a way that draws on my preferred learning styles. Okay. I want to point out mention something that I have used in my classes before and get your comment as to whether this seems reasonable. One of the problems in science in the past especially has been a lack of women scientists. Very few women scientists, and up until relatively recently, women scientists were discouraged. They were not allowed into the workplace at a high level as men scientists. They were sort of locked out of the playing field. And part of what I've tried to do in some of my classes is especially talking to the men in class relative to the standpoint they need to consider discomfort.
Absolutely.
It's very, very easy if you are an individual who is in effect in power and everything's going right for, you're comfortable. We need to stop every once in a while and maybe artificially make ourselves discomfortable, uncomfortable, in order to understand the feelings of others. Does that sound reasonable?
Sure, it sounds reasonable. And that applies for gender differences, for cultural differences, ethnic differences, for all differences, because it's very easy for us to know how we feel individually when we're uncomfortable, but we don't want to walk in someone else's shoes that often. And for any person who is a minority in a certain area, be it a discipline in school, be it a neighborhood, be it the school itself, the institution, for whatever it is, there's going to be a certain amount of discomfort and alienation that person will feel. And that's why diversity is so important you reach out to those people and try to make them feel comfortable. And with women going into science, you know, the first thing that had to be done was to demystify it, to dispel the stereotypes about the intelligence of women. That applies to all minorities, ethnic minorities as well as gender. So it's very important to put yourself in someone else's place, particularly when there's a situation that might be a little bit sensitive. Before you make decisions, before you make judgments. That allows you not to prejudge. It precludes prejudging. So you have to do that in order to make the most rational decision and the best decision. And if I might say something else, if we have time.
We'll
question,
take time.
okay. Question number 3, I can point out examples of discrimination and effectively respond to them. We can do that when we are being discriminated against ourselves. But we don't often do that. We are often unable to do that when someone else is being discriminated against. I know when something hurts my feelings or when I'm offended, but do I know when Dr. Hayes is offended or when someone else is offended? And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about cultural diversity, not just taking care of ourselves, but being sensitive to the emotions and the feelings and the needs of others too. That helps us to get along and communicate in our global community.
I think we got a phone call. We still have a phone call? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question about number 3. Yes, like since I've been at DSU, I have had my share of discrimination in classroom and in my dorm also.
Right.
And I was wondering, like, what's the most effective way to respond to that kind of discrimination, whether racial or like.
It could be anything, right? I mean, someone could be
anything.
discriminated against for anything, just about.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put this to Ms. Clark, see what she has to comment on this.
Okay.
The caller says they have experienced discrimination on campus. What is the best route to handle that? Should you get upset and flare up, or should you seek advice? What's the best way to handle individual instances of discrimination?
Okay. First thing is you've got to do something.
Right.
Because if you don't act, then you're just going to let it fester and simmer, and you'll probably make the wrong decision. Depending upon the situation, you can speak to the person and tell them what is wrong with what they've done. That, well, Bill, that remark offends me because you see, in my culture, that statement means one thing where it might mean something else in your culture. Okay? No problem. End of discussion. If it's a professor, it may be a little more sensitive. You would do that, like Dr. Kate said earlier, in private, in the professor's office. If it is some other form of discrimination where you feel like you're being overlooked or mistreated, then you should go to the source. Go to that person in the appropriate forum. Not creating a spectacle, not making a scene, and discuss it. And you discuss it calmly, and you explain. You explain what it is about the occurrence that is offensive or that has in fact slighted you or hurt your feelings. Communication is the key. If you do that, and if you do that calmly, it should resolve the situation. If not, and you feel strongly about it, then you seek further assistance.
Actually, doing this is really an opportunity for individual growth, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I know myself, my reaction when I feel slighted or I feel hurt, it's either pull it inside and go mull about it, and it just kind of, like you said, festers. It gets worse and worse.
It gets gross
I get
and
more
gross.
reactive,
Sure.
or I blow up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think either one of those will work very well.
No, no.
So there's
Remain calm.
a chance to grow.
Right.
Okay. Let's go on to our next questions then. Okay. I practice using several different learning styles when I study. I practice using several different learning styles when I study. And 6, I take specific steps to make a successful transition into higher education. Again, 6, I take specific steps to make a successful transition into higher education. Okay. We've mentioned learning styles a couple of times in these questions. Who knows what's their best learning style? Who has a feeling for what's the best way they learn in class or studying? Anybody? Okay. We're playing pass the microphone here.
Okay. I learn best by going to the library or somewhere where it's quiet. I cannot learn where noise, any noise, TV on, anything. I would not learn anything. If I'm lying down, I would not learn anything. I always go to sleep. And the best place for me is somewhere real quiet.
Okay. And then reading is a real strong learning direction for you.
Yes.
Does anybody learn better by listening instead of reading? Gina, you're nodding your head. How do you contrast the listening and the reading experience? Listening stronger for you? How can you tell?
Well, I learn better if I'm discussing it with somebody, like especially if I don't understand something, and I'll ask somebody a question about it, and they give me the answer, and I give them the answer back, and we'll talk about it. And by them drilling in my head, the right answer, that's the way I learn. And when I'm reading, and I learn better by just reading over and reading out loud to myself so that I can hear it myself and understand it better.
That's a very strong strategy. If you know you learn better by hearing, reading to yourself or reading into a tape and then listening to the tape back is a really strong strategy. Proud of you for using that. We have another call, I think.
I'd be interested in knowing if anybody learns by writing. That's the way I learn. If I write, I see a hand back there. If I write it, I know it.
Matter of fact, there's several books on writing to learn. William Zinsser wrote one. Okay, hopefully our caller's still with us, haven't given up on us. Yes?
Yes, Dr. Hayes, I study better when I'm in a room with friends having a conversation. I wonder if I'm really studying or am I just fooling myself?
If you're socializing.
Yeah.
What's the net outcome? How does it seem to work for you?
The same. Average. I don't do very well, but I don't do very bad either.
Okay, so it hasn't paid off big time to do that.
No.
Okay, we'll try that. We'll see how this goes with the audience.
Okay, the caller says that their favorite mode of studying is to get together with a group and just kind of talk about things, but they're worried that they're just fooling themselves, that this is just fun rather than studying. And part of the reason is because they're basically just kind of doing average. This hasn't seemed to have pushed their grade up any. Anybody have any comments on that? Are there dangers of getting together as a group? Yeah, Kim, you haven't spoken yet.
I found that a lot of times when I try to study in a study group, it's better to study with people that you don't really know a lot about. Like, you just need to know basically like their grades. You shouldn't study with people that you know are as smart as you. You should try to study with people who make better grades, and so you can have something to strive for, and they can give you some kind of input on how to make better grades.
So there's a little challenge.
So there's a challenge, because if you study with people that you know 9 times out of 10, you're going to talk about things that's not related to your test material or your study material.
There's always something to pull you away.
There's always something to pull your attention away. So if you study, you should study with people that you don't know as well, and then you maybe later on you can share with other people, with your friends.
I would say just offhand too, I know we're going to have to move along here, but I would say there's kind of a danger of studying with just people that are just like you. If you're of a minority studying with just minority students, if you're male studying with just males, if you're female studying just females, because I think back to my days as an undergraduate, and our study groups were multicultural, multi-ethnic, double gender, not multi-gender. We don't have.
You don't know.
Maybe maybe, I don't know. But there was a lot to that because everybody had a different view. Everybody had something different to add that enriched the whole soup of it. And I think that's part of what we're getting at with the whole idea of diversity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That will be much richer. Okay, I see they've got more questions up on the screen for us. They're moving us right along. Floor director's after me. Okay, our next question. He's snapping the whip over there. He's after me. I use a sound process for defining my special areas of interest and choosing an academic career. Again, I use a sound process for defining my special areas of study and choosing an academic career. And our last question, I effectively integrate schooling with my family and work lives. Again, I effectively integrate schooling with my family and work lives. Yeah, we have a few minutes left. What about that on choosing academic majors? And I'm going to ask you, how'd you decide?
Well, on the one hand, it was very easy because I had a love for literature. So I knew I wanted to do that, but it started off as a double major. I was a literature and a biology major. Then I had to make a choice. I love biology. I still stayed over in the biology lab doing all the dissecting for everybody else, but that's another story. I had to make a choice because the double major was just too time consuming. And what happened to me was I got totally distracted. And I started, we've got a phone call, but I started taking all these courses, and so I ended up with 4 minors and a major, you see, because I like school. So, but, you know, it was easy because I had a love for it all along, so that's what I wanted to do.
You became a schoolaholic.
I did.
Sort of like me.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And if I could afford it, I'd be in school right now, but I just can't afford it.
Somehow they won't pay us a full salary just to go to school.
I know.
Yes, they do have a phone call. Yes.
Dr. Hayes, I have a question about number 8. I have problems combining school, family, and a relationship in my sorority together.
Right.
And by the end of the week, I'm burned out. What can I do to help kind of break all that up into 1 week so that I won't get burned out?
Okay, you got school, family. Did you say work?
No, relationship and my sorority.
Okay, school, family, relationship, and sorority. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the question is, the individual has school, family, relationship, and sorority. And by the time she gets to the end of the week, she's totally burned out. What can she do? I have my own personal feeling about that, but...
Help. The best thing to do is time management, to set up a schedule. I think we've all had to go through that. Even working and going to school and having the extracurricular activities and relationship and family. So it's just prioritize, set the schedule, and keep it. If you can't remember it, I once posted a schedule on my dorm door, and I'd check it every day to make sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and if I ran overtime, if I couldn't compensate, I'd stop. But it's something you have to do, but it's most important to prioritize, get those things done, but it's also important to allow time for yourself, to allow time for recreation, so you won't suffer burnout. And from the health segment last week, I found out it's most important to exercise and eat right, too.
Yeah.
Then you'll feel better.
I'm still working on that one.
Me too.
Okay, I think it's a part of our show now where we're coming to a section in which you're going to talk about communicating across cultures. And I think they have some slides that will come up for you here.
Just as a reminder, in terms of communicating across cultures, the first thing you should do, and there are 8 factors involved, is to be active. And that means to educate yourselves. Don't isolate yourselves. Make a concerted effort to get to know people of other cultures and try to dispel the misinformation that you may have acquired about other cultures. And we aren't always aware of the misinformation that we have, but we do have it. What you should also do, next graphic please, is look for common ground. Remember that you're in the same classes together, you're in the same organizations and same activities, so you have common goals already. That's a common ground that you can start with in forming relationships and in getting to know each other. And once you do that, your interaction will be normal and natural. It'll be spontaneous because you're working toward the same goal. Work on projects with people from other cultures. When you have to do class projects, whenever you have the opportunity to get to know someone, do so. Reach out and extend your hand in friendship. The next thing you would do is you assume differences in meaning, and that's very important. All of this is about communication, and if we're talking about cultural diversity and any kind of sensitivity to other cultures, we can't assume that the same terminology exists with the same meaning for both of us. Don't use slang. Communicate carefully. Be careful not to use ambiguous terms, terms that have double meanings, because people from other cultures, other countries, don't necessarily know our American slang. They don't know the words that we've already decided to use in a certain connotation. So choose your words carefully and try to make sure that you're understood when you are communicating. The next thing is that you look for individuals and not group representatives. You must avoid generalizations. That's how stereotypes begin. No one person is the spokesperson for an entire group. No matter whether the people are from one ethnicity, whether they're from one race, one gender, they're not all alike. They are individuals, and none can speak or represent the entire group, the entire race, the entire ethnicity. So avoid generalizations, because that's what leads to stereotypes, and stereotypes give us misinformation and hinder communication. The next thing you should do is try to get inside another culture. If you're forming friendships with people from a particular culture, learn about it.